Hello friends, today I'm going to tell you a short but amazing movie story. The name of the movie is Monster Island. This is actually a Japanese film, and in Japanese its name is Orang-i-Kang. Today's story takes us back to the time of World War II, where a terrifying island is shown, an island filled with mysterious creatures. So, let's begin. At the very start of the story, we are told that during World War II, Japanese forces used to transport Allied prisoners on ships back to their homeland, so they could force them into hard labor. The ships used to transport these prisoners were called hell ships, because on these ships, prisoners were tortured in unimaginable ways, and often, the Allied Air Force would attack these ships. In such attacks, more than 3,000 prisoners and Japanese soldiers were already killed. After this information is given, the movie begins in the year 1944. We see a Japanese ship named Arizon Maru, where many British prisoners were kept. But surprisingly, even a Japanese officer was imprisoned there. His name was 2nd Lieutenant Saito, accused of being a traitor. The ship's captain chained Saito together with a British prisoner named Bronson, meaning both of their legs were bound with the same chain, forcing them to fight each other. But suddenly, planes started bombing the ship. Panic spread everywhere, and this massive ship began to sink. Taking the chance, Bronson and Saito jumped into the water. Eventually, exhausted, they reached an unknown island. All around them lay the dead bodies of soldiers who had drowned and drifted ashore. From extreme exhaustion, both of them lost consciousness. The next morning, Saito regained consciousness first. He took the pistol Bronson had, but when he tried to load it, the sound woke Bronson up. A fight broke out between them, while their feet were still chained together, making it very hard to fight. While struggling, they rolled into the water, and suddenly, a strange creature emerged from beneath the surface, attacking Bronson. Saito quickly fired the pistol, making the creature flee, but not before Bronson got injured. At this moment, they stopped fighting. Saito broke down so much that he wanted to shoot himself in the head, but Bronson stopped him. From here, a small understanding started to grow between them. They realized that to survive, they had to work together, not fight. They began collecting supplies from the drowned prisoners' belongings. Bronson found a sharp weapon, as well as water and cigarettes, since he loved smoking. Saito managed to find some shoes and new clothes. At night, Saito even caught crabs, cooked them, and shared them with Bronson. This is when they exchanged names. Even though Bronson spoke English and Saito spoke Japanese, they somehow managed to understand each other. Bronson then decided the chain binding them had to be broken. Using different tools, he began hitting it. Saito guided him, saying, "Strike at the corner of the chain, that's where it will break." Bronson followed his advice, and the chain broke. Then Saito also cut Bronson's part, and finally, both of them were free. They jumped with joy and slowly started to trust each other. But suddenly, they heard some strange noises. Following the sound, they discovered that 2 Japanese soldiers and another prisoner had already arrived alive on this island. Probably because they were wearing life jackets, they survived and ended up on this island. Saito immediately told Bronson to run into the jungle and hide. Bronson did so without delay. A little later, the soldiers found Saito and started talking with him. During the conversation, they noticed the scattered belongings all around, which made them suspect that there were actually 2 people here. At that point, suspicion grew around Saito. Seeing the hook on his leg, they assumed that maybe Saito was the traitor officer. One soldier held Saito at sword point, while the other went into the jungle to search for his companion. Bronson was still hiding, knife in hand, ready to fight. And just then, the roar of the sea monster echoed from a nearby cave. The soldier who went searching headed straight toward the cave, and there he truly saw the sea monster. Yes, friends, that sea monster instantly killed the soldier, ripping his head from his body and tossing it away. The other soldier, seeing his companion's severed head, was horrified and frozen with fear, but before he could act, Bronson leapt from behind and wounded him. Then Bronson and Saito started running for their lives. Meanwhile, the prisoner who was still alive heard the sound of the sea monster and in fear kept mumbling, "Orang-i-Kang." In Japanese, that means fishman. That fishman suddenly appeared and killed the remaining soldiers, even killing the prisoner as well. Then the monster began chasing Saito and Bronson. At one point, Bronson fell, and the monster pounced on him. But before it could kill Bronson with its sharp claws, Saito struck the monster with his katana, giving it a deep wound in the arm. Taking this chance, both of them ran for their lives. But not long after, they slipped and fell, rolling down far below. The impact knocked them both unconscious. When they regained consciousness, they realized they had been separated. Saito was badly injured, while Bronson was hanging onto a tree trunk near a waterfall. They slowly started moving separately toward the main island. At one point, Bronson accidentally lay down beside a massive crocodile. Luckily, the crocodile didn't notice him, so once again his life was spared. Bronson crossed some water and reached a grassy area, where from a distance he again spotted the sea monster. This time, the monster was treating its wound using natural herbs and plants. Suddenly, a huge crocodile attacked the monster again. A terrifying underwater fight began, and in the end, the monster tore the crocodile in half with its bare hands. Meanwhile, Saito found a piece of yellow cloth with numbers written on it. He realized that a plane had also crashed on this island. Going a little further, he found a dead monster, and beside it hung the body of a dead pilot. From the scene, it was clear the pilot had shot a monster in the throat with his pistol, killing it. But afterward, another monster killed the pilot himself. From this, we learn that there are actually two sea monsters on this island, a male and a female. The male is already dead, which means the one now killing everyone is the female monster. And likely because humans killed her mate, she was now taking revenge on people. Saito picked up the pilot's gun and also found the crashed plane's location. On the other side, Bronson too saw the wreckage and started moving toward the plane. Later that evening, the two of them met again. This time, Saito led Bronson into a nearby cave. There they discovered a monster's egg. Yes, the sea monster could actually lay eggs. And inside that egg, a baby monster was growing. Seeing this, Bronson said that before this baby is born, they must destroy it, and also the monster itself. So, Bronson dragged an inactive bomb from the crash plane into the cave. He tried to activate it by pulling the lever, but the lever was jammed. That's why Bronson and Saito went back to the plane to bring an axe-like tool. Usually, every plane carries a special kind of axe for emergency use. On their way, they also fired a flare gun to signal for help. But the light of the flare alerted the monster, which suddenly attacked them. Saito struck with his katana, and Bronson attacked with the axe. Then both of them ran into the cave and tried again to activate the bomb. Just then, the monster attacked once more. This time, Bronson was badly injured. Saito fired his gun and shot out one of the monster's eyes. But still, the monster didn't give up. At that point, Saito fired at the monster's egg, destroying the unborn baby inside. Seeing this, the monster went insane. Bronson then told Saito to run away because he knew with such injuries he wouldn't survive. So, he stayed back with the bomb, trying to activate it with the axe. Before Saito left, Bronson gave him his dog tag. Saito took it and ran out of the cave. Finally, Bronson struck the bomb with the axe. At first, nothing happened. Then he remembered how Saito had broken the chain earlier. Using the same technique, he struck again. And this time, the bomb exploded. Bronson died in the explosion, but Saito survived because he was far away. Suddenly, Saito heard the monster's roar again, meaning, even after such a huge blast, the monster had somehow survived. Saito ran toward the seashore. Moments later, the injured monster also reached there. Saito had arranged the corpse of a dead soldier to make it look like himself. The monster was fooled by the trap, and just then, Saito sneaked from behind and struck it with his katana. This time, Saito was able to overpower the monster, since it was already severely wounded. At the final moment, Saito had the chance to finish the monster once and for all, but he didn't. Instead, he struck beside it, sparing its life. He also tried to signal again with the flare gun, but there were no flares left. Exhausted, he collapsed near the seashore, and the scene cut away. Next, we see that Saito has been rescued in an injured state on a ship called the USS Fletcher. The year was 1945, meaning World War II was almost over. There, a Japanese officer and an Allied officer interrogated Saito. They also asked about Bronson because Saito had Bronson's dog tag. Saito didn't say much. He only said, "Bronson was my friend." We then see Saito smoking a cigarette, remembering Bronson, because Bronson himself used to smoke a lot. Here, it's revealed why everyone used to call Saito a traitor. In truth, he had killed his senior officer because that officer was extremely cruel and treated his own soldiers inhumanely. So, Saito wasn't betraying his country. He had simply taken a stand for justice. During the interrogation, the officers asked him if anyone else was alive on that island. Saito paused for a moment, then answered, "No, And in the final scene, we see the island once again, where the injured monster was still alive. This is where the story of Orang-i-Kang or Monster Island comes to an end. So at first glance, this story might seem very simple, but hidden within it are many deeper meanings. The strongest part of this movie is its real wartime context. And along with that, the depiction of hell ships and the prisoners' horrific suffering makes the film even more tragic. At the beginning of the story, Saito and Bronson were enemies, but being chained together, fighting side by side, they eventually tried to survive together, and that transformed them from enemies into friends. That chain on their legs didn't just physically bind them, it symbolized their hostility, their conflict, and the bondage of war itself. When the chain was finally broken, they weren't just freed physically, they were mentally freed as well. And here, the fishman or Orang-i-Kang was not just a monster, it was a symbol of nature's revenge. Human beings constantly wage wars, destroying everything in their path, and in this story, it was as if nature itself was protesting in the form of a monster. The female monster's revenge came from losing her mate. This gave the villain a much deeper dimension, showing that even the monster had a tragic reason. And in the end, when Saito chose not to kill the wounded monster, it showed his realization that there must be a balance between humans and nature. Maybe he even understood the grief of the monster itself. At the start of the story, he was called a traitor, but by the end, we see that he was in fact a true soldier who stood against injustice. This gave his character a kind of moral strength. Finally, Saito's lonely survival, smoking in memory of Bronson, symbolized the psychological wounds of war. Some experiences are so deep that they cannot truly be expressed in words. And maybe that is why the film didn't reveal much more about the island or the monsters. Overall, this movie is both a story of war and survival, and at the same time a symbol of humanity and nature's revenge. And since in the end the monster was still alive, the possibility of a sequel remains open. So, that's it for today. I'll take my leave here.